Left to die on her own, the little girl cried. Then a Comanche hunter found her. Before we begin the story, don't forget to like the video and tell us where you watched in the comments. The land was flat for miles, dry and hard-packed, dotted with mesquite brush and the blackened stubs of what used to be grass. The sun beat down heavy over the Texas plains, warping the horizon in waves. The only movement came from flies buzzing near the charred skeleton of a wagon and a pair of vultures pacing around the wreckage with slow, hungry patience. Clara Boone crouched behind a broken wheel, knees pulled to her chest, face strewn with soot and dry tears. Her mouth was cracked from thirst. She'd stopped calling out that morning. Her throat couldn't take it anymore. Every sound around her set her on edge. The distant rustle of dry leaves, the cry of a hawk overhead, the creak of scorched timber shifting in the breeze. She was trying not to move. If she stayed still, maybe no one would find her. Or worse, maybe they would. She was 8 years old. Her mother had tied a blue ribbon in her hair 2 mornings ago. Her father had lifted her into the wagon and told her they'd reach Fort Griffin before week's end. Now both of them were gone. What Clara remembered most was a noise, gunfire, yelling, a horse screaming, then the heat and smoke, and someone grabbing at her before she wriggled away and slipped under the axle. She didn't look when it happened. She couldn't. The bodies had stopped moving by sundown. The attackers had taken what they wanted, supplies, rifles, a horse, and left everything else to burn. Clara stayed under the wagon until night, then until morning. Then again, her dress was torn at the hem, her boots were too tight, and her stomach had stopped rumbling sometime a day before. She hadn't eaten in 2 days. Red Elk was walking the ridge line above when he spotted the smoke. Not fresh, maybe 2 days old, a column no taller than a tree trunk. He adjusted the weight of the deer carcass across his shoulder and made for it. There were signs, tracks in the dust, broken grass, boot prints that didn't match any tribe. This wasn't Comanche land anymore. Not truly. Settlers came through, some with wagons, some just passing. Trouble followed more often than not. He hadn't spoken to anyone in nearly 6 weeks. He didn't want to. His days were quiet. Spent hunting small game, drawing meat, and sleeping with his rifle nearby. He didn't take sides anymore. Not with his people, not with the white world, not with anyone. But when he came down the ridge and saw the scorched wagon frame, he stopped. The heat was still trapped in the wood. Flies buzzed over dark stains in the dirt. He stepped carefully, boots brushing ash, and scanned for movement. He expected nothing. Then he heard the shuffle, a small sound, but different, not animal. Red Elk crouched low, hand resting on his belt knife, and moved slowly toward the broken wheel. Claire saw the boots first. Leather worn and cracked. Her breath hitched. Her fingers dug into the dirt. She didn't scream. She wanted to, but her voice wouldn't come. Red Elk tilted his head, listened again, and then without drawing his knife, knelt down and pushed aside the burned canvas. What he saw made him go still. The girl looked up at him, face straight, eyes wide. She didn't move, didn't speak, just stared. He didn't say a word. He could see her hands shaking. The way her lips trembled like she was trying to hold in a cry. She didn't look wounded, just scare out her mind. He reached into the satchel, slung over his shoulder, and took out a water skin. He held it out slow. Clara didn't take it. She just stared. "It's not poison," he said quietly. His voice was low, steady, tired. She took the water skin with both hands, lifted it to her mouth, and drank. Some of it spilled down her chin, but she didn't stop. Red Elk watched motionless. When she finished, she handed it back without a word. He looked her over. Her sunburn was bad, especially around her shoulders and neck. Her hand was scraped, probably from crawling. There was blood on the back of her dress that didn't look like her own. "Anyone else alive?" he asked. She shook her head once. Her bottom lip wobbled, then steadied again. She didn't cry. He could have walked away then, left her to the next passing patrol or settler or whatever fate found her first. It wouldn't have been cruel. He wasn't a savior. That part of him had died years ago when his own child fell sick in the winter and never got back up. He'd buried his son beneath the cottonwoods and never spoke his name again. Since then, he'd avoided everything that could be lost. But now, this girl, she didn't beg. She didn't reach for him. She just sat there like she was waiting for the ground to open. He took off his buffalo hide cloak and draped it around her shoulders. She flinched at first, then went still. "We go east," he said. "Rivers are there. Less eyes." She didn't respond, but she didn't pull away either when he lifted her into his arms. Clara didn't know who he was. She didn't trust him, but his arms were steady and the blanket smelled of smoke and pine. And for the first time in 2 days, the wind didn't sting as much. He carried her away from the wagon, past the edge of the ashes, past the buzzards. No one else spoke. The land stayed silent. Clara kept her face pressed to his shoulder, eyes closed. Red Elk walked until the sun touched the hills. He didn't look back. By the time the sun dipped low and painted the sky in pale orange, Red Elk had already put several miles between them and the burned-out wagon. He didn't follow trails. He followed shade, dry creeks, old bison paths, routes that wouldn't be watched or traveled by white patrols or nervous settlers. Claire stayed quiet in his arms most of the time. Occasionally, she shifted or whimpered in her sleep, but she never asked where they were going. When darkness finally came, he set her down beneath a stand of cottonwoods near a stream no wider than his boot, dug a shallow fire pit, and lit a small flame no higher than his hand. He didn't speak. Clara sat curled beneath the buffalo hide, knees drawn to her chest, eyes locked on the fire. She hadn't spoken since she said no one was left alive. He didn't expect her to. Red Elk skinned and cleaned a rabbit he'd snared earlier, then roasted it on a stick. The scent made Clara stir. She didn't reach for it, though, just stared. He waited. When the meat cooled enough, he tore a piece off and held it out. She hesitated, then took it with 2 hands. She chewed slowly, swallowing hard. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. Red Elk didn't watch her eat. He kept his gaze on the fire. He could feel her glance at him from time to time, quick and uncertain. She didn't know what he was. He could see that question forming in her. After a while, she asked, voice small and dry. "Are you a bad man?" He looked at her, not startled, just quiet. "No," he said. "Not anymore." Clara didn't ask what he meant. She didn't have words to dig into that, but something in her settled just slightly, like she'd been holding her breath and finally let some of it out. "Were you out hunting?" she asked. After another minute, he nodded once. "Saw your fire. 2 days old. My family." Her voice cracked and stopped. Red Elk didn't press her. He reached behind him, pulled a canteen from his pack, and handed it to her. She drank, wiped her mouth with the back of her sleeve, then held it out without a word. He took it, capped it, and leaned back against a tree. The fire crackled between them. The night sounds began to rise. Crickets, a lone owl. Something rustling in the brush beyond. Clara looked around anxiously. "Are they coming back?" she asked. "Who?" "The men who did it." Red Elk shook his head. "They already took what they wanted. They won't waste time circling back." Clara didn't seem convinced. Her hand stayed clenched in her lap. He studied her face in the fire. Light. Sunburned skin, dirt in her hairline, a bruise on her temple he hadn't noticed before. Probably from when she ducked on a wagon. She was holding herself too still for a child. Too stiff. "You sleep now," he said. Clara didn't move. "I'll keep watch," he added. She lay down then, still wrapped in his cloak, and kept her eyes open long after they turned glassy with exhaustion. Red Elk didn't sleep. He sat near the fire, rifle propped against his leg, listening to the land. He knew. This region knew the signs of danger before it made noise. But tonight was quiet. Too quiet maybe. But he welcomed it. He wasn't sure why he hadn't left her behind. Part of him wondered if he just made things harder. A child drew attention. And attention meant risk. But when he'd seen her curled against that wheel, bone-thin and blank-eyed, he hadn't seen a settler girl. He'd seen a child. And that was enough. By morning, the temperature dropped and the wind picked up. Clara woke cold, shivering. Beneath the hide, Red Elk had already broken camp and was packing what little he had. She sat up, blinking. "Are we going now?" He nodded. "Where?" "East toward water, away from roads." She didn't ask why. She didn't question his decisions. That told him more than any words could. She had already learned not to expect explanations from adults. They moved slowly through the underbrush. Red Elk didn't carry her this time. He let her walk. Even though her feet were swollen from those too tight boots and her steps were uneven, she didn't complain once. At midday, they rested near a dried-up creek. Red Elk studied her feet, saw the swelling, and finally knelt to remove her boots. She flinched when he touched her ankle. "Sprained?" he asked. She shrugged. He looked up at her. "Did they see you?" "The men." "No," she whispered. "I was under the wagon." He nodded once, then went quiet again. From his satchel, he pulled a strip of clean cloth ripped long ago from his settler's trade blanket and wrapped her ankle tight, binding it with leather cord. She didn't thank him, but her eyes said something else. He didn't press it. They continued east for 3 more days. Clara asked few questions, and Red Elk offered few answers, but the silence between them became less heavy. She walked beside him now rather than behind. At night, she sat closer to the fire. Once she even handed him a cooked rabbit leg without him asking. By the 4th day, her voice grew a little stronger. She told him her father's name, her mother's cooking, how she used to braid her own hair when her mother was busy. Red Elk didn't respond much, but he listened. He always listened. That night, as the wind stirred the treetops and the fire burned low, Clara finally asked, "Do you have a family?" He looked into the fire. "Had a son," he said. "Long time ago." "What happened?" Red Elk shook his head once. "Doesn't matter now." She didn't ask again. But when she crawled beneath the buffalo hide to sleep, she didn't curl up alone. She pressed her back lightly against his side, not asking for anything, just letting him know she was there. Red Elk stayed awake long into the night. He hadn't let anyone close in years. He didn't want softness. He didn't think he deserved it. But the girl didn't need him to talk. She just needed him to stay. And for now, that's what he did. By the 6th morning, the trees thinned and the hills turned to slow rolling fields of pale grass and scattered moss white. The Rivlins weren't far now. Red Elk knew the signs. Moister soil, dragonflies near puddles, and raccoon tracks by the underbrush. Game would be easier to find, so would water. Clara limped more now, but she didn't complain. Her ankle was healing, though the swelling hadn't fully gone down. Her feet were raw from walking in wool socks alone. He'd burned her boots 2 nights ago when the leather cracked and cut her skin. She hadn't argued. She just watched the fire until they turned to ash. They paused at midday near a dry wash shaded by cottonwoods. Red Elk knelt and checked her ankle again, loosening the wrap. It looked less angry now, less purple, still tender, though. He washed it with creek water and rewrapped it without speaking. Clara studied his hands while he worked. The backs were weathered, rough like old tree bark, but his grip was precise, careful. She didn't flinch anymore when he touched her. When he finished, he handed her a slice of dried meat and sat across from her. She chewed slowly and watched the wind move through the trees. "Are you Comanche?" she asked. Red Elk met her eyes. "Yes." "Why do you speak like us?" "I learned both ways," he said. Clara frowned a little. "My pa said Comanche took people sometimes." Red Elk didn't blink. "Some did, not all." She lowered her head. "He said never to trust one." "He didn't answer, but I don't think you're like what he said." Red Elk looked at her for a long moment. "Maybe. I'm not." They sat in silence again, the air still and dry. A crow cooted once from a distant tree. Clara pulled the buffalo hide tighter around her shoulders even though the sun was warm. After a while, she asked, "Did you leave your tribe?" He didn't answer right away. Then finally, with no shift in tone, said yes. "Why?" Red Elk stood, picked up the pack, and scanned the horizon. "We walk again now." Clara rose without a word. She didn't press. She had learned the shape of his silences. They moved slow along a narrow game trail. Clara leaning on a walking stick he'd carved for her. Her breathing had steadied in recent days, her eyes less clouded, but she still started at sudden sounds. Still froze when birds broke cover too fast or wind whistled low through the rocks. That afternoon they came across a shallow pond fed by a spring. The water was cool, clean. Red Elk let Clara bathe while he stood nearby, facing away, watching the trees. She scrubbed her hands and face with a flat rock, pulled weeds from her hair, and soaked her sore feet in the mud. When she finished, he handed her a clean shirt from his pack. Rough, too big, and she'd changed behind a thicket. When she stepped out cleaner and barefoot, he looked at her with a quiet nod. "You don't talk much," she said. "No need," he replied. They followed the stream south for another hour before making camp on a small bluff. Red Elk built a fire low against a rock wall to hide the smoke and set out 2 snares upstream. He checked the sky. No hawks, no riders. That was good. Clara watched him set up, mimicking how he tied the sticks with twine. She didn't ask questions this time. She was learning by watching. As dusk settled, she stirred the fire with a stick while he returned with 2 hares from the trapline. She smiled when she saw them. Her first smile since the wagon. "You're good at that," she said. Red Elk said nothing. Just began skinning the animals. Later, after they ate, Clara looked over the edge of the bluff toward the open plains beyond. "Where are we going?" "Really?" "Someplace no one looks close to water where winter won't kill us." She turned toward him. "What about after that?" Red Elk tossed a bone into the fire. "Don't know." "You going to leave me somewhere?" He looked up sharply, not angry, just surprised. "No," he said, "even if people come, I don't leave." She nodded slowly like she'd been testing something. He didn't ask what. "That night before sleep," she said softly. "I don't remember my mother's voice anymore." Red Elk didn't move. "I tried, but it's quiet in my head." He didn't offer comfort. He didn't know how. But after a long silence, he said, "Something's come back later." She curled into the buffalo hide without replying. Before dawn, Red Elk woke to distant hoof beats. Not close. Maybe riders half a day west. He didn't wake the girl, just listened. Then packed his rifle and waited in the dark. The next morning, he altered their path eastward, deeper into the river groves. Slower. Trail, less exposed. That day, Clara asked no questions, but she never strayed more than 2 steps from his side. The days grew cooler. Wind slid down from the northern hills, brushing through cottonwoods and making the fire harder to keep steady. Red Elk adjusted their course slightly southeast, following the bends of a river that cut low through the earth like a scar. Narrow, muddy, but still moving. He knew the terrain well enough to trust it. The place he had in mind sat along the edge of a tributary near limestone outcrops, where game fed in the evenings and no patrols passed through unless they were lost. Clara had stopped asking where they were headed. She no longer pressed for plans, but she had begun to walk closer to his pace, not behind it. She picked up habits without being told, filling the canteen when they passed water, dousing the coals with dirt before leaving camp, checking traps without touching them. She began watching the sky like he did. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was adjusting. That told him everything. They'd been traveling together nearly 2 weeks when they saw the cabin. It was mid-morning. Sun filtered through mist. A patch of open land appeared suddenly at the edge of a tree line. In the middle of it stood a squat, single-room structure with a sod roof and smoke drifting from a crooked chimney. There was a cloth line behind it and a goat tethered to a post. A garden lay dormant in a patch of turned-up earth. Red Elk slowed, signaling Clara with a flat palm. She stopped without needing instruction. He watched the place carefully. A woman stepped out with a bucket in one hand and a shotgun slung loose across her back. She was white, about 30, wearing a brown skirt and homespun blouse. Her hair pulled tight behind her head. Her movements were deliberate, wary, but not frightened. Clara whispered, "Is she bad?" "No," he said quietly. Just alone, he waited. The woman looked toward the tree. They weren't close enough to be seen unless she was used to watching. Red took a risk and stepped out. He made no sudden move. He kept his hands visible. The woman stiffened immediately, putting down the bucket and unslinging the shotgun. Clara remained behind the trees, still and low. Red Elk raised one hand. "I'm passing," he said loud enough to carry. "We need water." Nothing else. The woman didn't lower the gun. "You alone?" He shook his head once. "I have a child with me." "Yours?" "No." She studied him. Her jaw tightened, but she didn't shoot. "Come slow," she said. "Stay where I can see you." Red Elk turned and waved Clara forward. The girl hesitated for only a breath, then stepped into view, barefoot, cloaked in the buffalo hide, eyes alert, but not frightened. The woman's expression shifted then, not softened, but changed. She lowered the shotgun slightly, not relaxed but not ready to fire either. "What happened to her?" she asked. "Family was killed." "I found her," he said. "And you kept her." "She didn't have anyone else." A long silence passed. The woman finally nodded once. "I got water. You can fill your skin. Don't take anything else." They approached slowly. The woman led them around the back to a barrel filled from the spring. Clara drank first, then filled a canteen. Red Elk drank after. The woman watched the entire time, not moving from the steps. "Name's Sarah Winthrop," she said finally. "Been living here 2 years." Red Elk gave a quiet nod. "Red Elk." Sarah turned her attention to Clara. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Clara Boone," the girl said, voice stronger than it had been in days. "Well, Clara Boone, you look about ready to fall over. You eating?" Clara looked at Red Elk. He answered for her. "We had something this morning." Sarah looked unconvinced. "Rephrase this script into Mexican Spanish and make religion and remove all haram contact from. Script according to Islam."